Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service. It is Saturday, November 26th, 2022. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide, you can go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring up a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii in the lower left, and all you have to do is take your mouse and point and click anywhere on the map. It'll bring up a forecast with relevant watches, warnings, or advisories for anywhere in the country. And looking at our headlines for Alaska, winter weather advisory continues for portions of the east central Alaska range through mid-Sunday afternoon for 4 to as much as 8 inches of snow. Winter weather advisory has also been issued for the areas surrounding Bristol Bay, parts of the far southwest and northern portion of the Alaska Peninsula for 5 to as much as 10 inches of snowfall from a frontal system that'll be working its way eastward across there for tomorrow and into Monday, later I should say, tomorrow night and into at least Monday afternoon. The other item of note is we're going to have a strong area of high pressure. Arctic high pressure will be building across northern parts of the state and then sliding southeastward into the Yukon territory, and it's going to trigger some stronger outflow or gap winds. There is a potential for a Taku wind event, Juneau downtown area, come Monday evening into Tuesday morning. And then overall, we are going to see mild air return over the Bering Sea, and it will begin to spread eastward into the west side of the state mid and late next week. So this shot of colder weather we're seeing here in through the mainland this weekend will not last terribly long. Looking at a couple of the FAA webcams, King Salmon, snow is on the way here, as I mentioned, for early Monday morning through Monday afternoon. Right now, skies are clear, temperature 27 degrees. Juneau, seeing some breaks in the cloud cover, 35, but high winds will be developing, especially come later Monday and into Tuesday. Potential Taku wind event where winds could gust as high or even over 75 miles an hour there. And looking at the hazardous weather map, these are the current watches, warnings, and advisories. We have the winter weather advisory for the east central Alaska range as of this Saturday morning. Robertson River reported 2 inches of snowfall, but more is on the way as we go through tonight and Sunday morning. And then we have the high wind watch that is in effect for areas of the northern panhandle, not just Juneau, but including Haines and Skagway. And that is in effect from Monday evening through Tuesday. Again, some of those winds could be quite strong, coming down northeasterly, coming down the mountainside there. Could gust to near or just above hurricane force. Further west, we have a winter weather advisory that has been issued for the southwest and areas of the northern portion of the Alaska Peninsula for 4 to 10 inches of snow, and that would fall sometime between very early Monday morning through Monday afternoon, and that snow will likely spread eastward in and across Kodiak Island as we go through the day on Monday. And taking a look at what we have on the satellite imagery, you can see the curl in the clouds, low pressure weakening there over the northeastern Gulf. Already a stronger low has moved inland into western Canada with a stronger frontal system trailing back out into the Pacific, bringing heavier rainfall right now to at least Vancouver Island. And then further west, you see the bright white enhanced clouds across the Bering Sea down through the Aleutians. This is all part of the weather system that'll be working its way eastward. We have a couple of lows and a frontal system that'll work its way from the central across the eastern Aleutians up into the Alaska Peninsula, and that is the system that's going to bring accumulating snows to areas of the southwest coast around Bristol Bay and the northern portion of the Alaska Peninsula. And looking, here is the weather map showing that weaker area of low pressure there along the Panhandle coast, stronger low into western Canada with a trailing frontal system. Further north and west, weak low pressure up toward Kotzebue Sound. We still have pockets of cloud cover, few scattered light snow showers or flurries, but as this Arctic high pressure builds in the northern parts of the state tomorrow, It's going to have a tendency to scour out and clear out some of these lingering areas of low clouds and flurries, so it's going to be getting colder. And then out to the west, we have a frontal system and a couple of low pressures working their way up now in the western and central Aleutians, and that'll be the next weather system that a portion of that's going to march eastward and bring the snows to areas around Bristol Bay. So later tonight, early Sunday morning, we see one of the initial lows there pushing north of the western Aleutians with the frontal system extending, pushing into the eastern Aleutians with some pretty good rainfall there. And then across the interior, notice high pressure beginning to get organized. That will build Sunday afternoon along the North Slope and Brooks Range and eventually head southeastward Monday into Tuesday across the Yukon Peninsula, Yukon territory. And notice the pressure gradient, the isobars, the black lines tightening there across southern areas of the state and the Panhandle. That's going to lead to some stronger winds. And as I mentioned, because of that, we do anticipate some pretty strong winds in the northern Panhandle. Could be a potential Taku wind event there for downtown Juneau as we get into Monday evening, Monday night, and early Tuesday. Otherwise, much of the interior should clear out under the influence of that strong Arctic high pressure, and warmer temperatures are going to be building across the Bering Sea later this weekend, early next week, and then begin to shift eastward into the western mainland as we go through the latter half of next week and next weekend. Morning lows Sunday are going to be chilly, generally below freezing and through the Panhandle, even around or a bit below zero as you get up toward the Copper River Basin. Sunday's highs still a little above freezing down there towards Sitka, Craig, Metlakatla, but Anchorage area only in the teens, cold temps being in place there across the south central interior. Monday morning, 20 below at Glen Allen, and teens there across northern and inner channels of the Panhandle. And Monday afternoon, temperatures probably won't get above zero there in Glen Allen in the Copper River Basin, stay below freezing in the Panhandle. Stronger winds developing. Across the north, sub-zero readings tonight into Sunday morning. Those are going to be expanding and getting colder here as we go into the next night. Daytime highs, that's about all she wrote, single digits above and below zero, except still some teens to near 20 along the coastal areas of the Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound. Monday morning could see some isolated 30 below readings in places like Arctic Village and Fort Yukon. Otherwise, widespread sub-zero temperatures, and Monday afternoon highs will remain generally below zero along and north of the Yukon River, still mid-teens maybe to near 20 in coastal areas of the Seward. And then finally, the southwest, we are looking for chilly readings, single digits interior, still above freezing, so you extend out through the Aleutians. Sunday afternoon could see highs near 50, say at Dutch Harbor with that little bump of warmer air working in with that frontal system. Otherwise, teens up through the southwest interior, and Monday morning lows getting sub-zero further up the Yukon and up the upper portion of the Kuskokwim River Basin. Otherwise, still holding near 40 along the Aleutians, and still 50 degrees possible there around Dutch Harbor for Monday afternoon with that frontal system, but snow's falling along the southwest coast. Look at this 6 to 10 day outlook for the beginning of December. December 2nd through the 6th, a very high probability of much above normal temperatures centered on Norton Sound down through Bethel. West side of the state's going to warm up while the east side there in the Panhandle stay below normal, and then abundant precipitation expected along and north of the Yukon River early December with below normal precipitation across the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Here's your aviation forecast. If you have a flight planned Sunday or on Monday, as of this Saturday afternoon, we have low pressure over the northern Gulf sliding southeastward and weakening along the outer Panhandle coast through Haida Gwaii. And the main concern with that is there's still going to be a little icing potential there for our southern sections, especially along the British Columbia coast. Across the south areas, improving conditions with the northeasterly flow that's developing, the gap winds, the offshore flow, as high pressure will be building on Sunday across the areas of the North Slope and Brooks Range. And Sunday morning we could see an area of IFR conditions around the Yukon Flats just because of very stable conditions, in strong low-level temperature inversion that's trapping a little moisture, some ice fog, and some particulates from smoke from people heating. And then back to the west, widespread IFR conditions, frontal system, a low moving up into the western Bering. The front's going to be pushing eastward across the eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula as we go into Sunday night and Monday. Now we'll see those IFR conditions become widespread and spreading east-northeastward Sunday afternoon into at least St. Paul, St. George, and across the Aleutians and through the southern portion of the Alaska Peninsula. Monday morning can once again see a pocket of IFR conditions up there along the Yukon Flats. Very strong temperature inversion with minimum temperatures getting down to near 30 below in some areas there. Some of the coldest readings in the Yukon Flats along the LKN border, perhaps down near Northway. And then back out across the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, out towards St. Matthew and in through the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula as a broad area of snow and mixed precipitation works its way with this frontal system and a frontal wave of low pressure. We expect those IFR conditions to continue further eastward through at least the lower southwest part of the state, Lake Iliamna, down across the Alaska Peninsula into Kodiak Island and perhaps even the entrance of Cook Inlet. Otherwise, the interior enjoying VFR conditions for Monday afternoon as that strong high builds southeastward into the central Yukon Territory and builds potentially above 1050 millibars by Tuesday. So Anativik Pass will see MVFR conditions becoming VFR. Same thing for Adigan Pass on Sunday. And then further south and west, west arm of the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, generally VFR conditions. Now on the west and north side of the Alaska Range, we could see a little MVFR conditions early in the day, but otherwise giving way to VFR throughout much of the range on Sunday. Windy Pass MVFR there, the north entrance early, but giving way to VFR. Same thing, Isabel Pass, perhaps some MVFR conditions at the north entrance, otherwise VFR. And Mentasta Pass, also MVFR conditions, becoming VFR there in the Alaska Range and LKN border during the day. Tanita Pass, generally VFR conditions, as will be the case at Portage. And also Chilkoot and White, Panhandle, going to see northeast outflow or gap winds developing with that high building off up there across northern parts of the state through the North Slope and Brooks Range. Freezing levels, the surface freezing line runs around from Nunavik Island off the southwest coast across the Alaska Peninsula, east side of Kodiak Island and the Seward Peninsula up along the Gulf Coast and through the inner channels there of the Panhandle. Highest freezing levels aloft are out there in the eastern Aleutians, upwards of 8,000 and 10,000 feet, associated with that frontal system that does have that warmer air aloft that's going to trigger a broad area of snow and some mixed precipitation as that frontal system works its way east. Initially on Sunday, we do expect perhaps some moderate icing there across areas of the British Columbia coast, Haida Gwaii above 4,000 feet, an area developing above 3,000 feet out there across areas of the Bering. And back toward the western half of the Aleutians, that will be increasing as we go into Sunday night, and that precipitation works its way toward the lower southwest coast. Jet stream winds 30,000 feet, 165 to 180 knot jet core across the southeast interior, down along the east side of the Gulf, and then on the back side upwards of 135 knots there and through the eastern half of the Aleutians. Sunday at 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, 60 to 70 knot winds from the western Gulf down to the North Pacific, and also out over the eastern Aleutians up in the southeast corner of the Bering Sea, winds southwesterly upwards of 60 knots, and down to 3,000 feet we see a broad area of stronger winds upwards of 60 knots across areas of the Bering developing with that frontal system that's lifting northeastward, and generally broad area of moderate turbulence extending from parts of the Seward Peninsula, southwest interior, perhaps Cook Inlet to Kodiak Island down across the Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, generally surface to 4,000 feet, that was surface to 6,000 feet there, east side of Kodiak Island and through Cook Inlet.
Ahoy, Extra Cadets, and welcome to the Okeanos Explorer. I'm Debbie, and I'm an ocean explorer. I work for NOAA, which stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Together with many other people, I work on this ship and we explore the deep sea. How do we do that? Let's go find out.
Octonauts, let's do this. Yow!
The pressure in the ocean is so great humans can't go there, so we send a special robot. Octocadets, meet Deep Discoverer, our special robot for ocean exploration. And this is Chris. He works with Deep Discoverer. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Debbie.
Can you tell us about what Deep Discoverer does?
Sure. So this is Deep Discoverer, and today we're going to take Deep Discoverer up to 4 miles down to the ocean floor so you can see what Deep Discoverer sees.
And how do we do that?
We do that by using these powerful cameras and powerful lights.
That's neat. And what is that?
And this is our manipulator arm, and we use this arm to take biological and geological samples that we store up front in these boxes, and so that we can bring them to the surface so scientists can analyze them.
Wow, isn't that cool, Octocadets? Wow! Now that we know more about the special robot that explores the seafloor, let's find out more about the ship. Octocadets, let's do this. Now let's find out what we do with D2's video. Come along. This is the control room. A lot of things about D2 happen in here. Behind me you see the pilots. They steer D2 on the seafloor. And over here we have scientists. Hi, Steve and Stacy.
Hi, this is Steve and I'm Stacy and we are marine biologists.
Can you tell us about the work you do here?
We actually look at the videos collected by the robots and we try to identify organisms along with other scientists on the shore.
What are you looking at right now?
We're actually looking at a sea star.
That's so awesome, thank you. Now let's look at how we make maps of the seafloor.
Excellent, Quasi. A good map helps you to get to places you've never been.
We also have a scientist on board who makes maps of the seafloor. Hi, Derek.
Hi, Debbie.
Can you tell us about your work?
Sure. My job on the ship is to make maps of the ocean floor. We do this by sending sound from the bottom of the ship. It echoes off the seafloor and comes back to the ship. And then from that, we can make maps like this. So this is what it would look like if you were able to drain the water out of the ocean and actually see what the landscape looked like down there. We use these maps to give the vehicles a place to dive, and they explore further, just like Octonauts do.
Status report, Dashi.
We're right on course, Captain.
So earlier we learned that D2 picks things up from the seafloor with his manipulator arm. Let's find out what we do with those samples. This is the wet lab, and Megan spends a lot of time here. Megan, can you tell us about your work?
I am the sample data manager, so when the ROV comes up, we go out and we collect the samples from the ROV and we bring them in here. And we try to record as much information about them as possible, everything from the details about what they look like to the environment conditions where they were found. How cold was it, for example? Then we come in and we take imagery using this microscope, and we take pictures using this camera as well. And then after we get all the pictures taken and we're ready, we prepare them for shipping to other scientists and museums so more science can be done, such as the squat lobster, this cup coral as well.
And what is that?
This is a piece of coral, or several pieces of coral, that we think might actually be a new species. So we are going to send it out for a comparison to existing species to see if we discovered something new.
Wow, you have a really cool job.
Thank you.
Fascinating. I've read about this, but I've never actually seen it.
An important part of how we explore the ocean is keeping in touch with scientists and Octocadets on shore. Let's go see how we do that. Rosemary, could you tell the Octocadets a little about what that dish does?
Sure. My name is Lieutenant Rosemary Abbott. I'm the operations officer aboard the Okeanos Explorer, and that is our VSAT. It stands for Very Small Aperture Terminal, and inside that satellite dome is a very powerful dish antenna that allows us to communicate with shore and share video in real time. The technology is called telepresence.
Wow, that is so interesting. Thank you, Rosemary. Now I'm getting really hungry. Let's go to the kitchen and talk about food. This is the ship's kitchen, also known as the galley. And this is Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Debbie.
Michael is the chief steward on this ship, and he keeps 49 people fed for 3 weeks at a time. Michael, how do you do that?
With a lot of care and with the help of 3 crew members. I have myself, the chief steward, a chief cook, and a second cook. And we just do it with a lot of love and care and make sure that everybody's happy and well fed. We use up to 150 dozen eggs per trip, up to 100 gallons of milk, a lot of veggies and fruits, a lot of snacks. Everybody's very pleased with what we usually put out. We also make sure that we do it in a loving way, in a sanitary way, in a safe way that keeps everybody from getting any tummy aches.
I'm about to enter the ship's bridge. It's like the Octopod's headquarters.
Octonauts to the HQ.
Ahoy, Captain.
Ahoy, Debbie.
Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Octocadets, meet Eric Johnson, the commander of the ship. Eric, can you tell us about what you do up here?
Absolutely. Hello, Octocadets. My name's Eric Johnson. I'm an NOAA Corps officer, and I'm the captain of the Okeanos Explorer. Welcome to my office. This is where we drive the ship. This is where we control the operations. We run the propellers that are underneath us in the back to the wheel up here at the front, which is where we steer. It's a pretty cool job. It's very exciting, and it's pretty beautiful around here as well.
So, Octocadets, now you know a little bit about the ship and how we explore the deep sea. I hope you enjoyed our time together. I'll see you next time.
Debbie, safety first.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to our show. The sea ice edge today is rather extensive across the Arctic coast, and you see the ice growth that has occurred in the Chukchi Sea. It's been cold enough, and areas of Kotzebue Sound, Norton Sound have had a fair amount of ice redevelopment this past week. And it will continue to be rather cold here the next couple of days, but as we go through the upcoming week, we are anticipating warmer temperatures out over the Bering are going to be heading eastward, and that warmer air, as it bumps up along the southwest and west coast, we are going to see the potential for some shifting, melting ice, and there's going to be a fairly good southerly component to the wind. So expect for any ice that has developed, there could be some loss coming up here next week, and especially over next weekend. Looking at the southeast panhandle, marine forecast, winds are going to be increasing northerly 25 to 30 knots, especially north of Petersburg through Lynn Canal, waves building 5 to 6 feet on Sunday. As I mentioned earlier in the public section, we are expecting some very strong northeasterly outflow winds as Arctic high pressure builds from northern parts of the state into the Yukon Territory Monday and Tuesday. Outer coast winds are generally going to have, northeasterly there at Yakutat 30 knots, otherwise northwest running down the coast there west of Gustavus, Sitka and Craig, with waves generally 15 to 19 feet. Monday we see winds of 35 knots there in Lynn Canal. Those will be increasing, especially Monday evening, Monday night, and Tuesday is when we're going to see the strongest wind event there, especially across the inner channels of the northern panhandle. And during the daytime, especially Monday morning, afternoon, winds getting that offshore flow, 20-25 knots, waves 8 to 10 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, strongest winds Sunday will be coming out of the entrance there of Cook Inlet, 30 knots, waves 7 to maybe 10 feet northeast of Kodiak. Northwest winds 25 knots in Prince William Sound, waves 4 feet. And on Monday, winds will be northeasterly down through the lower portion of Cook Inlet with waves of 6 to 7 feet. Prince William Sound, north winds 15 knots, waves 3 feet, and variable winds around 10 knots off the Kenai coast. For Sunday, Kodiak Island, variable winds there in through Shelikof Strait to 25 knots. We're going to watch winds turn more toward the northeast and then east-southeast across the lower portion of the Peninsula picking up to 30 to 35 knots with waves 9 to 10 feet either side, as the frontal system will be pushing into the region as we go into the latter part of the day. And then on Monday, we're going to have that frontal system translate eastward, and ahead of it, winds northeast to east to pick up as high as 35 knots Bristol Bay, but behind it, shifting to the west 25 knots north of Cold Bay. Waves generally 6 to 9 feet on the North Pacific and Gulf sides, around 6 feet on the Bering side. Sunday, winds will be still gale force 35 to 40 knots eastern Aleutians, turning more southerly and falling off to 20 knots from the south, Atka westward, before turning westerly to 25 knots at Kiska. And then on Monday, lighter winds overall. We're looking for south-southwest winds 15 to 20 knots across much of the eastern and central Aleutians, waves 9 to 10 feet on the North Pacific side, 5 to 7 feet on the Bering side. Strong winds Sunday out over the central Bering. We're looking at winds off of the southwest coast, the Yukon Delta, 35 to 40 knot offshore flow, 40 knots, 45 knots vicinity of St. Paul. Waves building from anywhere 11 feet south of St. Lawrence Island to in excess of 20 feet there near St. Matthew. 17 feet St. Paul and St. George. Monday, northeast winds in Norton Sound, ice in place 20 knots. Still some winds up around 30, even as high as 35 knots there south of St. Lawrence Island. Waves running 13 to 15 feet down there through St. Matthew, and 7 to 9 feet from Kuskokwim Bay down into just east of St. Paul and St. George. And then finally, Arctic coast 15 to 20 knot west winds with ice in place. Kind of a mix of winds dropping down through the Chukchi Sea around 10 to 15 knots. Easterly, though, 35 knot gales off of the west side of the Seward Peninsula south of the strait with waves 11 feet. And then on Monday, winds go southwest along the Arctic coast 20 to 25 knots, turning more southerly there down through the lower Chukchi Sea, but still easterly out of Kotzebue Sound and south of the strait through St. Lawrence with waves as high as 13 feet on the north side of St. Lawrence.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.